normotic personality, excessively normal, no operative subjectivity or critical thinking. And this was a significant leader of a political party. So he goes on further to say about this particular type of personality. We might say of the psychotic has shut him or herself up in the extreme depths and unconscious and symbols that have meaning, and there's no way to organize the symbolic meaning in the person's life, so they become psychotic and they apply meanings that don't necessarily match the external world, and that's the psychotic experience. But the normotic has shut him or herself up in an extremely superficial way. The unconscious is an anachronism. The unconscious is something that doesn't make sense anymore. And trying to understand the unconscious is abandoned in the pursuit of human progress. And you might remember the quote from Hannah Arendt a week ago, was it 2 weeks ago, where she did the interview and reporting on the trial of Adolf Eichmann, who organized the transportation of people going to the concentration camps in World War II. And what she was surprised when during that interview was she expected something really evil and something just horrible. And what she said was all this man could do was give cliches when asked questions, give spin when asked questions. There was no depth. And what happened was that she realized what gives evil power is the lack of critical thinking. What gives evil power is surface thought. And so evil, like a fungus, can sweep a nation and take over a nation. And from that we learn that nations can be not reflective. Nations can be a group of people that no longer make meaning for themselves. That meaning is given to them. And when meaning is given to them, their place is given to them. Nina Simone. Do you ever know Nina Simone? Singer, wonderful, beautiful. Singer, voice, just wonderful. She was gifted from the age of 3, they could tell. Gave her piano, took care of her. She had talents. They nurtured those talents. At 12, she was going to give her first public appearance, and her parents sat down in front. Now, Nina Simone's African American. Her parents are sitting down in front. This was mid-1950s or so, I think, or late 50s. And as the quotes say, as the Caucasian people were coming in, they asked her parents to go sit in the back to make way for the Caucasian people. And she said, well, I'm not playing unless my parents are sitting up front. So they gave in and moved her parents up front. She did not accept her place. She created her own place. That spirit in her did not shrink within. It stayed out there, which is a testimony to her home life. Because her home life, by 12, didn't already teach her to shrink, but to be present for who she was as a person. And we'll get to an 11-year-old story in a minute that's different. And there's another story about this mother and this 11-year-old and this 8-year-old girl. They're out in the snow and they get on the bus, and the mother puts the little girl, she had her snow coat on, puts the little girl in the seat, and she's sitting next to a woman who had a fur coat. And so the woman who had the fur coat pulls up her coat. And the little girl says, I thought she pulled up her coat because there was something disgusting between us, like a roach or something. So I pulled up my coat because I didn't want whatever it was that was going to get on her to get on me. So she was sitting there and she's looking. She didn't see nothing. And she looked at the woman, and then she realized I was the object of disgust. It was me. She was being put in her place. That woman was letting her know something, put in her place. The story that some of you might be familiar with, Savasti in the life of Buddha. Savasti was 11 years old, and he was tending the water buffalo. And in the water buffalo, he set him out to graze, and he was taking a break, and he walked in the woods, and he sees Buddha meditating. And from Savasti's point of view, here's this beautiful man meditating, and Savasti starts to run up to him to talk to him and to engage him. And so in his spontaneous spirit, he's moving toward something he considers beautiful and to engage this man, but then he stops himself. And he realizes, I'm an untouchable. I can't approach this man. So by 11, he knows his place. He knows who he is. And he stops himself. He no longer has to be told his place. He knows his place. For his father had taught him that in our society, the Brahma, the religious people, the priests, the teachers, they are the highest class. They are the highest caste. There's a second caste, and the second caste is the political and the military people. And then there's a third caste, the merchants, the farmers, the craftsmen. Then there's a fourth caste, the ones who do manual labor not performed by the higher castes. But in Savasti's family, the lowest of all, he's an untouchable. He cannot even live in the city. And if he touches somebody who is other than his class, other than his caste, he gets beaten, physically punished. And so his father tells him, this is the way things are. And he studies the scriptures, and the scriptures teach him, the sacred scriptures taught that happiness is the ability to accept one's position in life. By 11, he had internalized his place. Now, you know, it's funny if you not funny, but if you look at that list of castes, you got the myth makers, the priests, the teachers, those who make the myth that structures society. They're the top people. Then the political, then the military, then the merchant, the farmers, the craftsmen people. And do you remember, if you know the conservative writer Edmund Burke? Some of you might be familiar with him. He's the one that said that the candle makers, and I believe it was the hairstylists, they should never have the vote. It would be an unruly society if they ruled society. These craftspeople of the third rung here. And then you have the people who clean up in the city, and you have the people who live outside the city. You know what's curious about that? In Buddhism and in genuine Christianity and in democracy, that's completely done away with. Completely done away with. One person, one vote. You don't have a caste system. Who did Jesus serve? He served the poor. He served the people who were outside the city, the lepers. Who did Buddha engage? He engaged Savasti and made Savasti a monk eventually. So there are rebellious voices. In our society today, to know your place. At the University of Wisconsin, on a Friday night, there was a person who wore a t-shirt that says, legalize gay marriage. He was punched in the face. At Carthage College, around that same time, there was a teen who committed suicide because he had experienced harassment at school. In Milwaukee, there were 5 teens who committed suicide because of bullying and harassment. There was another story of this 11-year-old boy who went to be a cheerleader. And his friends called him sissy, called him gay, beat him up and broke his collarbone, broke his shoulder. All of these are behaviors that tell people where their place is. And they're violent acts telling people where their place is. Not just them, but those in the community around them. Don't you be like this, because if you're like this is what you'll get. This is your place. This is not your place. What struck me about the story about the cheerleader was that they thought it important in the article to say that he insisted it wasn't true. As if it were true, it would have been the right thing to do. It wasn't wrong just because it was wrong. He insisted that. So as we confront the processes in our culture that tell us our place, as we begin this conversation and trying a way of understanding who we are, it might be helpful for us to go back and look at our stories. And do you find places where your spirit moved you to participate, and then there was a voice in your head that said, you better step back. You better step back. Or you found yourself going to take a seat somewhere, and somebody said, that seat's not for you. You're not to sit there. Each of those places where we withdrew, where Nina Simone did not withdraw, but those places out of peer pressure, those places out of social impingement, which we withdrew, those places out of which we're presenting a joyous self to a parent and it gets rejected, those places that say, I want to study this, and that gets rejected, those places that say, these are my friends and these other friends make fun of me, so I start making fun of those people along with them. All those places in our lives. And we live in a culture that will tell us our place. Let there be no doubt about that. And if we're in this culture, and I'm of this culture, I have been told my place. And sometimes I have been forthright and said no, and there have been times when I have taken a step back. All those places within us are places of woundedness, are places that still hurt, possibly, that need attention. And for us to step out and claim our place, and for us to say, no, this is not my place, this is where I belong, this is what I'm going to be about, for me to make that decision on my own, I have to attend to that historical woundedness to do that, because it's still there. In the story of Nina Simone at 12 years old, what if she would not have spoke up, and what if she would have played that and with her parents in the back, and every time she was playing, she looked, there they would be in the back. I know in my own life experiences, those kind of events are like a spike of shame that drill into me when I remember them. And it hurts my soul. So I have to deal with that, to be free of that, to come out and to engage this world. Do I know my place? We are taught in many ways our place. But hopefully, this is a place that says, can we bring healing to that woundedness? Can we rediscover those parts of ourselves we have discarded and have put aside because we felt there was no place for that part of me? Can we create a place where we can come together and allow that to come out, allow those parts to have expression, and find out who we fully are as we participate in recovery from Western civilization?